Well, it's really too bad, but nobody thought to take any pictures when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock. We needed cell phones, friends. We needed them. If you go to Plymouth, you can still see the actual rock. In any case, you can see what people in Plymouth at the end of the 19th century had heard from somebody's uncle was the actual rock. Nobody could really say, of course, why he was sure. Maybe it didn't matter. But in any case, because there are no pictures, no one can really say whether the rock is, the rock or not. And because there are no pictures, nobody can really offer much by way of proof for what it was like in Plymouth during those early days. Doesn't mean that people haven't tried. You can go to Plymouth Plantation Museum, for example. Some of you may have done that as part of confirmation. As far as imagining what life was like for the Pilgrims goes, Plymouth Plantation Museum has to be the gold medal winner, hands down. It is a whole recreation of the Plymouth settlement, and they've even gone so far as to reverse bioengineer the livestock. You think I jest? I don't. They want the oxen to look like 17th century oxen, just in case you were wondering what 17th century oxen looked like. I highly recommend a visit. It's great. But when it comes to imagining the life of the Pilgrims, a more typical approach has been through paintings, recreating imagined scenes from their lives. Well, I kind of went deep on this whole thing. Every Thanksgiving, of course, as a congregational pastor, my Facebook feed fills up with those paintings, those images, and they're right next to all the snarky posts from my historian friends reminding me not to believe anything in those pictures. Do we really think that Chief Massasoit showed up with a big smile and a casserole dish full of corn? Come on, Max, don't tell people that. They say things like that. But over the years, there is one painting in particular that I've come to think might really be getting it right. It's a sort of odd artifact because it tells a different chapter in the story than you might typically get. This particular painting imagines what it was like for the Pilgrims on the day when the Mayflower finally weighed anchor and set sail for home, leaving them to it, leaving them to this new world, leaving them to get working on what they would come to understand was a city on a hill, leaving them to the howling wilderness, leaving them. After wintering over in Cape Cod Bay, having lost many of his sailors to the same diseases that ravaged the Pilgrims, it was early April, and the captain of the Mayflower decided it was time to cut bait and get back to England as fast as he possibly could. And this particular painting imagines what it was like for the Pilgrims on that day as they saw the Mayflower sailing toward the horizon. Some of them have gone down to the beach right where the shore meets the ocean to watch that ship get smaller and smaller. Others are sort of standing on sort of a high bluff, gathered together. A few are waving. But if you pause for a moment and really look, you'll see that one person is not exactly waving. Her hand is outstretched, almost like it's waving. But her face is full of grief, as if she wants to hold that receding ship in her hand until the last moment, as if should someone somehow manage to throw her a line from the Mayflower, she would grab it and let herself be taken back to the world she once knew. Have any of you guys seen The Martian? No. Someone's like, no, and I wanted to. Some of you have. If you've seen The Martian or you've read the book, I have to say, I think the pilgrims would get many of the emotions in that story. They would get its textured understanding of what it is to be left behind, mission or no mission. The pilgrims knew they had a mission, but even so. And that's something I find even more remarkable in this morning's gospel from John, this account of Jesus at the Last Supper when he tells his disciples about how he is going to leave them behind. But that he's not leaving them destitute, because he's going to send them what he calls an advocate, a holy comforter, to be with them going forward. And what I find remarkable about that is that Jesus is telling his disciples that they will have a mission, that what was his mission in some ways will now be theirs to carry forward. He's making it clear that they're much more than just his cheering section, that they always have been, and that they're more than just people who were lucky enough to score tickets for his show like Hamilton, only more so. He's making it clear that going forward, he has work for them to do. But he's also saying that he won't be with them in the ways they've gotten used to. He won't be there teaching and healing among them, going back and forth across the Sea of Galilee, ducking in and out of Jerusalem. There won't be any more confrontations with the Pharisees and him, and that's too bad, because who hadn't come to enjoy a good confrontation between Jesus and the Pharisees? They all loved it. Well, no more. And yet, in a deeper way, he promises that he will still be with them. And this is where the Holy Comforter comes in. The Greek word for that is pantokrator, and it means one who comes alongside. So what Jesus means is that even as he departs, God will still be the one who comes alongside the disciples. And what they would come to see in time, of course, is that God would come alongside them, especially in those moments when they came alongside others who were hurting, others who were in distress, others who needed love and care and a sense of belonging, others who needed someone who would speak up for them. If you think about it, so much of what it is to be faithful is learning to come alongside, and in learning to see God whenever and wherever that happens. Coming alongside. That's what the Holy Comforter does. And yet, can anyone really blame the woman in that painting, reaching out her hand in a gesture that's part farewell and part, oh God, please take me with you? Well, I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about it, and I think my answer right now is, well, it depends. It kind of depends on who you're left with. We don't have the companion picture for this that I wish we did, but it would be telling if right next to that picture of the Mayflower sailing off into the sunrise with the eyes of the pilgrims straining to watch it go, there was another picture. What I wish we had is the picture of when everyone turned around and faced the new world once again. The picture of when they turned around and saw each other standing there. What are the looks that would be on their faces then? Because there's a big difference between seeing ourselves as marooned, as left behind, and seeing ourselves as building a world, isn't there? There's a big difference between fighting to survive and creating a life in great difficulty, isn't there? And isn't there a big difference between trying to find shelter and trying to build a home? And part of the difference, I think, is the holy mystery of the people that we're with. I'm reminded of the African proverb that says, if you want to go quickly, travel alone. If you want to go far, travel together. Travel together because there is holy alchemy in that. There is something greater than just the sum of its parts. And to be a Christian is not just dancing alone with Jesus cheek to cheek. Jesus understood that if you want to go far, you must travel together. And if he wanted nothing else for us, by golly, he wanted us to go far. And this morning I would just say simply that this is what Pentecost is. It's a call to travel together. A call to see that this is God's will for God's people. It's a call to find the God who comes alongside us, particularly as we come alongside others. That's what all this is. If you've attended a baptism here, then you know there's a moment when I kind of take the child and I lead them around the congregation and I introduce a few of you in the pews by name, and usually there's a sort of a little mention of something about you. It's kind of working without a net, I'll be honest, because I'm always sort of aware that I might just blank on someone's name in the moment. I might say, I'm married to her, the mother of my children, Grace and Emily. You're right, this is Liz, she's a teacher. It could happen. And sometimes I probably run the risk of naming an attribute that isn't someone's particularly favorite thing about themselves. I apologize if I've done that. But the purpose behind that gesture is important, because what I'm trying to affirm, by way of a few specifics, is that each one of us is someone you can count on, and each one of us is someone you can count of in particular ways. Each one of us has something really important that we bring to the table. We each have ways that we are taking part in building that shining city on the hill that the Pilgrims only got to start. That's who we are. That's what this is. And the Pilgrims believed that the world depended on that. And I'm convinced that they were right. For those of you who are part of our youth choir, and especially for those of you who will be hanging up your red robes for a little while, I have just this to say. I think you know in your hearts what this has been. Even if from here on out you are called to new pursuits, I think you know. It was never about the music. It was about the world you made. Wednesday by Wednesday by Wednesday. It was about the people you were free to become here, especially if there was no other place where you were quite free to be who you are. It was about the ways that you learned to come alongside one another in good times and bad. About learning how to offer hope and energy and joy together, even when any one of you might not have been feeling especially hopeful or energetic or joyful on any given day. In fact, especially then. And I guess I would just say that for all its flaws, for all its imperfections, and for all the wrong notes that we seem to hit, the church is the community. It is the commonwealth where all that happens. For wherever that happens, we in the church would say that something holy has come alongside, giving a deeper meaning to what is happening. And lastly, our hope for you in your time here has been that you would start to see that each of you has something very important to bring to the world's becoming. Each of you has a role to play in building the city on the hill. Knowing you even just a bit as I do, I have to say, what a wonderful city it will be. And may this littler city that dwells on this particular hill always be a home to you. For those of us who remain, the work continues. The invitation to come alongside still beckons. Each one of us has a part to play and much to offer. The mission of loving and serving the world is still our mission. On Pentecost, this call to travel together reminds us that for all its challenges, our mission is to proclaim that at the reality of all creation is the deepest joy and life eternal.